idea was you have to contemplate God, which he called to agathon, the good, because it was the greatest possible good, the source of all goodness, of all light and all life, really. And you had to contemplate that. And his idea was that no person could fully understand after contemplating God. Like you contemplate God, you contemplate the good, and you come to an understanding of its appearance and its manifestation and its nature. After that, no person could ever really error again. You couldn't dip into, really there'd be no way for you to become as ignorant, to go back out into that outer darkness, right? Because where there is light, there can be no darkness, right? When you shine a light, the shadow's gone.
That's incredible. I'm with you on that. And it's just like to be able to condition yourself not to go back to those things that brought you silent pain and suffering.
Yeah, but you got to keep your headspace right. Like you were saying, you have to constantly reorient yourself upward, because another idea from these traditions is that the soul's essential nature is eros, which some people are going to confuse with sexual desire, but really what we mean in a philosophical sense is just desire in and of itself, right? As human beings, we want things. We want stuff, sometimes we want those things are less tangible. We want security. We want happiness. Sometimes those things are physical. We want a new car. We want a good looking spouse or something like that, or even a faithful spouse. But the soul always wants something. It's really not content anytime it gets those things, because that itch that it's trying to scratch that it can't is actually a remembrance of God and its union to God. So the whole idea is to take that desire, because it's a powerful fuel. Which, if you have a desire to be a stand-up comedian, you have a desire to be an actor, you have a desire to be a writer, that desire can push you on against all odds, and you can succeed against all odds because it's so powerful a motivator. But now if you orient that upward and your desire becomes the spiritual, the numinous God, or God in Christ, that is what philosophically is probably the best direction, the best kind of focal point or goal for this energy, this desire, this eros.
It's like it's so funny right now. A good friend of mine is kind of in the public eye right now with a joke he did about Puerto Rico at Trump's. And when you talk about this kind of like this drive, I mean, there's no better example of that than Tony Hinchcliffe and his drive and his belief in himself to get to exactly where he wanted to be, which is at the Trump rally, making jokes about Puerto Ricans. And it's just like such an interesting time because, that I don't think there's a scandal if it wasn't at that exact moment, at that exact time, in this time in our country.
Mm.
And that's exactly what you talk about, this kind of the will to this to happen, but it's also this kind of will to like get closer to God. And it's like,
Mhm.
regardless of whatever you believe, like there's gonna be people that are like, oh, I'm over the religious stuff. I get it, but like, what do you believe in? Like, what do you
Right.
believe? Like, you just think we're like monkeys on a rock hurling through space, and like all this crazy kind of detail in the world just randomly like it makes no sense to me, dude. It makes no
Yeah.
sense to me.
Yeah.
What you're saying is that's this just randomly this beautiful meal was made with no creator making it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean
And then
that's the whole thing. Especially, I didn't. This isn't my quote, but I love it. I heard it years ago. The issue with science is that it breaks several of its first rules right out of the gate. Right? It says, "Give me one free miracle, and I'll explain the rest." So it's like like it's like we're not even off on a good foot here. You had to
yeah,
break.
yeah,
You
yeah,
had to
yeah.
break several of your rules to
Yeah,
even fucking
yeah,
exist.
yeah. It's so crazy to me. So let's get into what you want to talk about, man. I feel like you've answered my question. I want everybody to understand it. You had this conference. You put together your own Suicide Squad to go out there and just kind of figure it all out. Take us through this, man, because I love it. It's like I was on Rogan. We talked about the pyramids, and I kind of go along with him. I'm working my way back into kind of where I can insert myself a little bit more. I think that the history of the Egyptians is like way deeper. Like who knows how deep that, I mean, we see things that look like the Sphinx all over the world on top of mountains that go way deeper, but we think that's where it stops. And I think it just, you know, we what's the saying somebody said on the show? We live on the shoulders of giants.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, so when we get into this, I just think it's so much deeper than maybe some people want to think it is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like everything that I wrote in my book, and I'm like the first person to say this, is that what we have a really nicely preserved tradition in the writings of the ancient Greeks. We don't necessarily get that in the Egyptians, right? Not a lot of people know how to read the hieroglyphs. And it's just people seem to be more